Welcome in, everybody, to the Bleacher Brothers Sports Network. Robbie Lastella here, joined by a special guest this week, Miles from the UNT Eagle. You can find him on Twitter at the UNT6. Miles, how's it going?
It's going pretty good. I know I'm not wearing green, but this is what I put on this morning, and I forgot to change it. But I'm doing pretty good. I'm excited for this matchup. We haven't beaten FAU in quite some time, so it'd be nice to see some revenge come back in this game.
Yeah, I talked about this on my last podcast with the last time FAU played North Texas was the AAC tournament. That was probably the last memorable game for FAU fans because they lost, I believe, the next game, and then they went on to have an unfortunate performance in the NCAA tournament. So that's a game FAU fans remember, and I'm sure North Texas fans remember it as well because it ended the season. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of hype around this game. What's the vibe been around the Super Pit? I know FAU's headed to probably one of the most I guess storied, you could say, venues in the AAC. So has it been a packed house so far this season? Are the fans kind of realizing this season could be something special? Is that there yet?
No, not at all. I mean, it's actually been pretty hot topic around here is how bad attendance has been. Now, to be fair, we had a game on election night.
Mm.
We had many games over. We had one. Our biggest home game of the year was Oregon State. Oregon State's playing great in the WCC, by the way. I mean, they just beat Gonzaga. They're a very good team. We played them over Thanksgiving break. We played a lot of teams over Christmas break. A lot of NAIA, lower level D1 teams. We played UAB on New Year's Eve, and so it's been really poor this year so far. This last game was probably the most attended game of the year. It felt louder. There's all the students were there. Students are getting back into it. That's been the biggest problem. Haven't had really any students at these games because I mean, election night was a big night, especially around here. Everybody was voting, everybody was watching, especially our student base. So that's been the biggest issue. It's a Sunday afternoon game. I'm not expecting many students to be there like we had 1,400 yesterday or on Wednesday, but alumni base usually turns out on weekends a little bit better. But it's been not been great this year. Same for football. Football's had its issues as well, but men's basketball has had attendance problems for about as long as it's been a program. I mean, they've just always struggled to pull fans in. After the NIT championship, after the NCAA tournament, it was still just poor consecutively to what you would want to see. I mean, it's a 10,000 capacity arena, and you're getting an average of 3 to 5,000 a game. So it's like half empty. It's been an issue. So it's getting better. I will say there was a great crowd for Temple on a Wednesday. Not too bad. I expect it to get a little bit better, but we only have 2 weekend games left at home.
Mm.
So that kills it. You're playing teams like Charlotte and Wichita State and Tulsa at home, and UTSA at home, and it just ruins the vibe. You don't get Memphis in a rematch. You don't have SMU. FAU is not as good as they used to be, and we still didn't get good crowds for those games. So,
Yeah, no, it's kind of. I hear the unfortunate schedule, and I'm realizing that's like an AAC thing. I mean,
Mhm.
FAU has no Saturday home games the entire year. I mean, I'm sure they probably could have scheduled one in the non-con if they wanted to, but to have no conference games on a Saturday is just, to me, that's just unfortunate. That's how you're not going to build fans. I mean, I'm sure it's the same at UNT. There's Saturday night is the going out night this
Mhm.
for the students, and then Sunday morning. Unless like it's like a huge game, getting up for a Sunday 12 or it's a 2 p.m. so 1 p.m. your time. That's a lot. I mean, there's like students like to sleep in. There's
Mhm.
down here. The saying is there's a million things to do besides go to a basketball game, go to a football game. And you guys are right outside of Dallas. I'm sure Denton has its own community of nightlife and stuff as well. So I'm sure there's a million things to do up there too. So yeah, I wish the schedule. And I mean the 9 p.m. I don't know if you guys have a 9 p.m.
We have a lot of 8 p.m. games. We
Yeah,
have at least 4 more, I think. So
Yeah,
it's
it's
intense.
brutal. I mean, we have Wichita coming in on a Wednesday or Thursday at 9 p.m. And I just saw that, and I saw a UConn fan tweeting back when they were in the AAC. They had no students go to their 9 p.m. games. I'm like, if UConn isn't drawing for a 9 p.m. game, I don't think anyone's drawing for a 9 p.m. game. So that's unfortunate, but hey, it doesn't look like the lack of filled stadium has kind of affected anything. Undefeated at home, even though you guys lost a couple pieces this offseason, building on year two of a head coach, which is I know what a lot of FAU fans are kind of hoping next year will be is a better start to the year than what it's been. But you guys have had that good start year two under Ross Hodge, and you guys have been able to rebuild. Did you think that the success would come right away?
Well, last year it was again, you have such a new team. I mean, you brought in a ton of new guys. Your starting lineup was basically new guys except for Mulai, who is again here again, and he's starting again. He's having a better year this year. But last year, it was you're riding the high. I mean, you won the NIT, and you beat Oklahoma State before, and you beat Wisconsin, and then you beat UAB again the fourth time that year. And so it was like you have this high of it, but then it's like, well, now you have a whole different team. You couldn't retain Tyler Perry. You could have, but you didn't. And you're under a new staff, completely new staff. So it wasn't like we were expecting to go to the NCAA tournament. I mean, you look at how that team was formed. A lot of these guys are playing great basketball at their new schools this year because, of course, they all transferred out this year. So I mean, But the thing is, it's a testament to how good Ross Hodge learned under Grant McCaslin of how to rebuild, because Grant had to do that same thing in 2019 when we won the regular season and COVID canceled it in 2020. I mean, that was a really new team. I mean, he had guys like Javion Hamlet, Thomas Bell, James Reese, Dangu. Those guys were all coming in brand new out of JUCO. So it. You saw it happen under Grant, and you were like, well, it has to happen under Ross. I mean, he was doing it for so long. And so far this year, I mean, you're bringing guys that didn't play as much, or they were still pretty good at their smaller level schools, and they're coming in and they're really contributing. I think, of course, the biggest one that has been the best contributor to this team and the biggest factor is Brennan Lorient from FAU. So it shows how good Ross is at developing these guys and forming them into his style of play. I mean, North Texas is a really, really slow team. They were really slow under Grant McCaslin. They said they were going to speed it up because they brought in guys that were used to fast pace, and it didn't. It got slower. So it shows that you just have to be patient. I think that's a big thing for FAU fans. You saw this high success, and it just drops off a little bit in the first year under a new coach, but it's a whole different team. And we saw it early on in our year. We struggled in games against. I mean, Utah State's a great basketball team. You struggled against Utah State down the stretch. Struggled against High Point down the stretch. Struggled against McNeese down the stretch. Struggled against Memphis down the stretch of that game. So you're losing to good teams, but you still see the signs of newness. Now you're 6 games into conference, and it's like they're starting to ramp it up a lot more. And Ross deserves all the praise that he gets for how well he's building this program, because it's hard. It's really hard to get these guys, and now the transfer portal window is like 30 days, unless that's just college football. I'm pretty sure it's all sports and NCAA or 30-day portal window. So if he loses guys, he's going to lose guys to they're graduating. He's going to have a tough time, but he's been doing a good job. And I didn't expect any success this year. I did, but it's still too early to tell how good this team's going to be.
Yeah, you guys attack the transfer portal like pretty well, in my opinion, right? You get a guy like Aiton Wright in here who has, we talked about before we got on, has that postseason experience. And then you got Belo, who, didn't get a ton of time at FAU. But I mean, I remember back at the Final Four, I'm standing there on the sidelines, and I was still pretty new to the FAU beat at that time, and I'm watching him throw just catch alley oops up and back and forth, and I'm like, oh yeah, this guy could just be something. He was just sitting there practicing alley oops, and I'm like, I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't know. I didn't even realize at that because I'm also bad with faces, so I didn't realize who that was. But then I thought about it after, and I was like, "Oh yeah, that's the young kid. That's Belo." And then next year, you saw his role build a little bit more, and then now he's really getting playing time. And the same way, in my opinion, Giancarlo Rosado fit for Charlotte. I thought Brendan Lorient was going to fit for UNT. What have you liked out of the transfer guys? Just not just Lorient, but Wright too. And I'm sure didn't you guys get somebody else as well that was pretty big name? No.
We didn't get any other bigger names than those two. I mean, we have Jonathan Massey. He played at McNeese. He played at Longwood. He is in his last year. This is his final stop. I mean, he's been good for this team, especially defensively. He's struggled a little bit, just being consistent. I think that's been the biggest issue with this team, especially when you get into the guard range. Wright and Giselle from SFA and Jasper Floyd as well from Fairfield. It's just been a consistency issue. I mean, there's been some games where Tim Wright and Giselle in the Memphis game, the biggest game of the year that you need to win, they go over 0 points on over probably 17.
Mm.
It was a struggle, but you had to rely on guys like Laurie and Sissoko to be able to contribute, and they did. They showed up, they did. But then you go against a team like Memphis, it's just you can't expect that much. But I think another a big name that, or not big name, but a piece that we have is Grant Newell. He struggled a little bit. He came from Cal. He struggled a little bit in this last game against Temple, but he's been that piece that you can rely on. He's our starter. It's surprising Lorient hadn't started this year very much. When Ross and Grant are really stubborn about not changing their lineups.
Mm.
So unless it's a big injury, like we had last year, we had injuries last year, so they were changing it up a lot with Jason Edwards. But Lorient hasn't really started, but he also he has the most contribution to this team, and he gets the second most minutes. So I mean, he's been able to perform at a high level. But I think Giselle and Floyd, it's almost a little bit like they've been kind of hesitant to shoot so far. I mean, a lot of these guys are pulling up. Attendance has been, Wright has been the same way. He's been like pulling up and not taking those shots that we've been seeing earlier on this year. But so far they've been good enough to keep this team upright. Wright has hit several game winners this year, so he's been clutch. Is what we need. But overall, this team feels like they're more built for a March run than last year because they have those right pieces they need. And, I know Sissoko is not a transfer, but he's stepped up. I mean, I know last year against FAU, he struggled a lot against Vlad. And, this year, him and Danger went back and forth. Him and the Utah State guy went back and forth. I mean, he's been showing a lot of progress. So these guys on this team that it felt like last year they didn't gel very well on the court. This year, it feels like they're really, they're playing more together, and Ross hit on all these transfers, in my opinion.
That's a big thing, right? I mean, the hit rate on the transfer portal is, so people like to say it's never 100%, but sometimes it can be pretty close if you make the right moves. Doesn't mean everyone has to be like a 20-point per game scorer. Find the right pieces and it works out that way. It's interesting to kind of hear the similarities between Hodge and Jacobs a little bit, because not Hodge necessarily isn't from the Drew coaching tree directly, but he worked under McCaslin, who worked under him. And FAU is the same way at the beginning of the season. They didn't want to change that starting lineup, and they had a guy, sounds a lot like what Brendan Lorient was doing, and Trey Carroll coming off the bench, playing the most minutes, providing a lot of pop. And then FAU was in a little bit of a rut after dropping 2 to Michigan State and Memphis. So they put Trey in the starting lineup, and it's been a huge addition. I mean, he scored double figures now in 9 out of 10 games. He's the only guy that with playing experience that returned. So his contribution sounds a lot like Belo. And that's what I've noticed is all of the FAU guys who transferred out, especially at the forward position and big guy role, are all having career years. Vlad at Michigan, G at Charlotte, the Lorient at UNT, Carroll at home, and then you go down a little bit further. Isaiah Gaines, who was at FAU, is now having his best season, although only like 6 points a game at Radford. That's still his first time playing. And then you go down even further, and you got Leo Beath averaging 20 points a game at the JUCO level. So it's just crazy to see that all these guys are having success. And so, that's good to see. I know I talked with Jakis on Monday, and we asked about the situation with Lorient leaving, and I mean, it kind of FAU wanted to keep him, and then Lorient decided to take some visits, and he decided by the time he came back, things just didn't work out. So FAU wanted to keep him and Rosado. Those were about the only guys, maybe Boyd and as well, who were within the price range, and just didn't work out. But it's good to see that everyone has kind of kicked it into gear and are having good years. You mentioned a couple of the losses, and it seems like they're only the good teams. I mean, High Point was top 100 in the net for a while. I don't know where they're at now. And Will Wade has them basically one of the top mid majors, and Utah State under Gerard Calhoun has been insane. What would you say the weaknesses were in those games, and have you kind of seen those weaknesses fade away as conference play has gone on?
Uh, I mean, a little bit. It's really, I think a good example is this UTSA game we played last Saturday in San Antonio, and North Texas was up 40-18 at halftime. It was their best first half performance. I mean, Matthew Stone, a guy that has not done hardly anything for this team this year, hits a three. So it's like you're having your best half, and they fall apart in the second half. That's what happened at Memphis. I'm not saying they fell apart as much in some of these losses, but it was like down the stretch, like I've been saying, the consistency of the guard play has been just very poor in these losses. I mean, now Utah State is a very solid team. Memphis is a very solid team. High Point and McNeese are too. So, and then ungranted, these were all on the road. And that's been the biggest issue is usually this North Texas program is like a really, really good road team. They went on the road all the time. They're able to pull it away under Grant McCaslin. But now you see that transition, and it's like, well, you're not as good on the road, and you're really collapsing offensively. And it's a testament to the pace of play. When you're limiting possessions defensively, you're limiting your possessions offensively. You're slowing down the clock. You're shooting within 5 seconds of the shot clock going off. And that's what's been the biggest problem is when they're getting tired early on in the season, it was bad shot selections. It was ugly turnovers. It was just not the brand of basketball we're used to seeing. And I feel like now you're kind of used to it. You've kind of adjusted a little bit. You got rid of those, tougher games. Now you're in a little bit of a more relaxed, not relaxed, but, you're in more of a, steady mode with the rest of these teams in this conference because the only tough game you have left really is UAB and Temple. I would guess FAU is pretty up there too, but you got two tough road games that they're going to want to win, and I think it should change. It's just hard to tell. It's really hard to tell how these guys are consistent. Especially with Atin Wright and Giselle, you got to be able to hit your threes. You got to be able to create some sort of offense and not have these lackadaisical turnovers. And I think the biggest thing that we saw start a conference play and now teams are adjusting to it is the press. This team is really bad against the press. I mean, against Memphis, I think they've had at least 5 turnovers in press, led to about 10 points. Temple and UTSA and East Carolina and Rice, they were all pressing, and North Texas couldn't get out of it, especially in the second half. And that's been the biggest issue, I think, for this team in conference play. But they should be fine. I think, if you have the consistent shooters and if you're able to, rely on your defense like you have been and rely on Laurie and Sissoko, they've been the guys that you've been able to lean on and been able to kind of get your points in when you need it. So you can't always rely on that. That's not going to win you games in March, but, I think they'll be fine. And, you have those scoring. That's college basketball. You have scoring droughts, especially on the road. But that's my biggest concern, and I think it's going to be a little bit better. They did a little bit better in this Temple game of this late game execution. They kind of struggled at it early on, but I think they've kind of adjusted to it now.
Yeah, for FAU going into this game, it kind of sounds, they struggled with turnovers at times as well. The biggest issue all year for FAU, and may help UNT. It may not if they're not hitting their shots. But FAU is allowed I think like close to 38% from beyond the arc, and it's 360th out of 364 teams. The perimeter defense has been a struggle, and that's allowed. Even Rice just shot 52% from beyond the arc against FAU. Almost, almost won it on the road, but FAU luckily was able to storm back and save that one from what would have been probably one of the more unfortunate losses of the season. But they saved it. Now they got a little bit of momentum, and they got to find a way because from what I've seen, when UNT has been on from three, they've been pretty solid, but when they're off, they're off. So if they get North Texas on an on night, it's not going to bode well because especially with the way that UNT tries to really stymie you on the other end. That's been the other issue for FAU is inconsistent three-point shooting. Some nights they're near 40% from beyond the arc. Other nights they're 1 of 11 at halftime before hitting a couple in the second. So it's been a tale of two stories for offensive three-point game, and then on defense, that's been a big issue. So to me, that kind of looked to two biggest things for FAU in this game are to find consistency in that department. And then the rebounding has normally been pretty bad this year, but over the past 4 games, they've won the rebound battle every game. So that to me is showing they're improving, they're fighting, which is important. But for UNT, what would you say are the keys for them in this game?
I think, this has been a really good free throw shooting team this year. That's been the shocking part of this. I mean, in the past few years, it's been like, wow, this team cannot shoot free throws. But right now, you're 30th in the country, 77%, 78% if you round it up from the line. They've been able to really shoot, like you said, shoot from deep. And I know FAU has really struggled with that. And Temple was actually really solid at defending the three and not allowing it. Same for Memphis, same for can't think of a UAB as well. But yeah, I think consistent 3-point shooting early on will get you more favorable in this game, especially for North Texas, because when they can get on those quick runs and they can be able to size that lead up more and more at home, I think it'll help a lot more. I think also pertain to defense, I think you just have to be able to force turnovers. If you're FAU can't really get in that transition, North Texas is going to try and limit them to possessions. Obviously, they always cut those possessions by a lot. So that's why their, points per game allowed is only like 58 points a game. So I think, really forcing turnovers, hitting those threes, and I think establishing your style of offense early, because we've noticed that this year. I think McNeese and High Point are good examples of allowing the other team to really break it open, and especially in fast break. North Texas has kind of struggled in that. You saw it happen in Utah State. It was more toward the end where they just kind of struggled to keep their same style of offense. They just kind of fell apart. And I think having that early on and being able to have that lead, and if teams are obviously going to cut into leads, you're not just going to blow everybody out every game. But I think having like I've been saying, consistency is key in this game, and if they can have that pace down to what the slowest they possibly can, and be able to hit those shots, get to the free throw line, that's going to be a big key in this game.
We shall see. Sunday, 2 p.m., FAU UNT. I believe it's going to be an ESPNU game, so that's good. That's good for the conference. Get some. I mean, I like it better when it's on ESPN too, but we'll take ESPNU. I'm hoping for you and the rest of the rowdy UNT crew out there that you guys get that attendance that you've been wanting. It's the same issue here. Don't worry. That's the thing though with FAU. A lot of people root for arena expansion, and they do pretty good at filling that out what they got right now. But they go up 5, 6, 7, 8,000. Then you run the risk of empty seats sometimes. So I don't know. I'm not sure what I want them to do with that arena. I like the improvements they've made cosmetically. It looks a lot better than when they used to play, when you guys used to come over and see USA days. So that's the big positive in the arena. But you guys got a trip down here. I think towards the end of the conference slate.
Late February. It's like we have that game, and then we end our rest of our regular season after that. I think it's we have 2-game home swing and then at Temple to end the year after FAU. That's a tough little stretch. I mean, Wichita State, they somehow held Memphis in a close game. I don't know how. That was the ugliest basket. I don't know if you watched it.
Oh yeah, that was
That
diabolical.
was that was awful. I mean, I got so mad just watching Wichita State just
Turn
chuck
the
up
ball over.
horrible shots, turnovers. I mean, now Memphis had 14 turnovers in the first half, which is just mind blowing because Wichita State's a horrible defense.
Yeah.
So it's like anything can happen in this conference. You know, North Texas can slip up once and they're off the bubble completely, in my opinion. Now I have fans disagree with me on that, but you know, I don't. You look at it. I mean, you guys know obviously about getting at large and seating wise, and you look at
That's
it.
stressful.
Quad one wins. North Texas has 0. You don't have another quad one opportunity because you don't play Memphis again. So
Yeah.
it's like you got to kind of win out or win the conference championship to be able to be considered. And on attendance, you mentioned the late tips and all that. That's been a problem. I think another problem is how long these games have been going. I don't know if that you've seen videos on that or just noticed it in general. I mean, the games are going 2 hours, 15 minutes, 2 hour, 20-minute games. I mean, I watched the Ole Miss Mississippi State game on Saturday, and it was a 3 hour game. It went to overtime, but it was a 3 hour basketball game. And, especially if you're doing these late night tips, you're ending at 10:15, 10:30. I'm not walking out of the arena until 11, 11:30.
Yeah.
So it's like that's that's a big problem in college basketball. And I think those late night games on top of a longer extension of a game hurts attendance. I mean,
Yeah.
when you're
No,
bringing kids to a game, nobody wants to be out by 10:30.
no, it's the Sunday game. It's the same thing. I mean, the Sunday games, in my opinion, unless you do them at or in the afternoon, that's your only shot of getting people. And then you still have a large crowd of people who go to church or just go to brunch or just chill at home that won't do that. And then you get later in the day, then it's the work day. Then if you get it at night, forget about it. But yeah, I mean, a 9 p.m. game at FAU is the fans are not leaving till 11. I haven't seen a game this year go under 2 hours. I mean, it's been close. There might have been like hour 45, hour 50, but it's been like long games. And I mean, I enjoy the media timeouts because, our job, that's good for sending
Mhm.
tweets out, send for whatever. But I feel bad for the fans. I mean, there's only so many times you can go, grab a popcorn, go to the bathroom, whatever. You're just sitting there for, a minute, 30 seconds to sometimes way longer for no reason. And that just adds up. And then I've noticed, this year it's happened a lot in FAU games. I don't know if it's just because of honestly, our two of our centers played overseas, so the rules may be different. But I've seen way too many hook and hold reviews. I'm not a fan of the hook and hold review. I don't know what led to them. There must have been a lot of injuries resulting from it. But I mean, that's been the biggest review in my opinion. And then also in 2 minute situations, it's literally every play.
Mhm.
It's out of bounds. It's fouls. It's flagrant fouls. And so that just adds up and it adds up and it adds up. And then, I mean, FAU, not FAU, not just the AAC it's ESPN. And so ESPN has always been known for commercials. I mean, always, that's their thing. I haven't compared between like CBS Sports or
I
whatever.
think CBS Sports has the longest TV timeouts in the history. Now, that's my opinion, especially in football. I feel like they're like 3 minutes and 45. I feel like they're really long for
Oh,
no reason. I know we don't play on CBS anymore, but in Conference USA, it felt like we were in TV timeouts and just it took a lot longer. It's a good production, but my gosh, I
yeah.
mean, sometimes they're just way too long.
For football, we were an army, and you're right. I feel bad, but there's nobody I hate more in that stadium than the dude who trots out with the sign that says 3 minutes 30 seconds. I'm sorry, that is just it's the worst. I like you don't even need like even for our job, you don't need 3 minutes 30 seconds. Like I mean,
Yeah.
like that's just a lot. And then it's just every time out at football is bad.
Well, football this year against Army, I think our game was under 3 hours because we only had 2 TV timeouts in the first half because
Oh,
Army had their historic, you know, 13-minute drive,
Oh gosh.
or 14. It was like the longest drive I've ever seen in my entire life. So, but I do agree. I think the TV timeouts are getting too long, and it's a little particle of attendance wise, but I think that does affect it. And here in DFW, I know I've driven around Boca and all that, but the traffic here in DFW is so bad. And when you play the 6 o'clock game on, let's say you're playing on TV, it's hard for people that don't live in Denton, which is a lot of our fan base. They don't live here in Denton, and they're traveling. They go from work to home during 5 o'clock traffic, and then they go to the Super Pit in 5 o'clock traffic. It's horrible, and I know you can't change it. And that was a really big deal a couple weeks ago. There, people were arguing about marketing and all this stuff about how we're not good at it, and we can't change tip times, and I think the AAC has kind of failed a little bit, in my opinion, on bringing these good matchups in national spotlight. I mean, there's only a few of them that are going to be good games in big spotlight. I mean, UAB Memphis on Sunday before us, that's a big game, and it's on TV and it's at a good time. But other than that, it's been poor these last 2 years.
Yeah, I mean FAU versus Memphis this year. FAU was still pretty. The wheels hadn't fallen off of that brief stretch in conference play yet, and so there was still FAU could compete at the top of the conference, whatever. And that game they just stuck it on. I think it was ESPN2. It was January 2nd. The students weren't here. I was like. I mean, I get the glory days run is over, but I mean it's still Memphis versus FAU now to their credit, I guess they must have known what was going to happen because Memphis beat them by 30. But I still would have liked to see that game on probably like at least I don't care what channel it's on, but at least the students were there. That's what made that atmosphere good. Is when Penny Hardaway, the people are like showing him a water bottle. And it's like, yeah, and so that's when it was good. I don't know what they got to do to get some more favorable TV times. I guess that's just an AAC thing. I don't know. But I mean, maybe I don't want to complain too much about the TV deal because I've seen rumors that a lot of these storied brands left the AAC and they could potentially reopen the TV contract in a couple years. So I don't want that to happen. I'll take the ESPN money. I'll take the 9 p.m. tip offs. Just keep us at least in prime time. But
I
you
agree.
mentioned football. I want to talk about that a little bit. UNT and made some moves this offseason. You guys got a new defensive coordinator, correct?
Yeah, Skylar Cassidy from Sam Houston. He's the youngest defensive coordinator in football. He's 30 years old.
Oh wow.
But he led a really good Sam Houston team, defensively, especially. They've been a good defensive team these last 2 years since they've been in FBS. And, it was we obviously know all about the issues of North Texas. You saw it in the game against FAU, the run defense. I mean, just overall defense has just been poor these last 2 years under Eric Morris. And
Yeah.
bringing in a guy that has not a whole lot of experience, but he has that up and coming talent. He was able to bring guys in here from Sam Houston that were really important to their team last year. And along with retaining some of these guys you had last year, like Wazlowski and Brian Nelson and, some of these other guys on the defensive line. But it's a complete overhaul defensively, and that's what you needed. You need to have some sort of change because now you're going to year 3 under Eric Morris, and you're still ranking bottom 10, bottom 15 defensively in a lot of stats, and you're not winning the games you should be winning. Last year was a horrible, horrible stretch, especially in conference play to end the year. You start off 5-1, you beat FAU. Everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, we're competing for a conference championship," and then it just goes all the way downhill, crashing and burning. And we barely beat Temple to get at that bowl game, and then of course you lose the bowl game. So it's important for this team to get better defensively, and I think they hired the right guy. It's obviously way too early to kind of tell. I haven't even watched any practice or spring ball yet, but um, there is some hope for this program. I think there is.
Yeah, I mean, I did not realize the bowl game. Unfortunate, you guys are on like a little bit of a skid, right, with bowl games.
We haven't won a bowl game since January 1st, 2014. We've lost postseason wise 16, 17.
Not the fingers.
It's like nine postseason games you've lost. Conference championship. I mean, we got blown out by FAU, wasn't even close. Blown out by UTSA, wasn't even close. You lose all your bowl games, and they were playing good teams in the bowl games.
Yeah.
But this year you played against a good Texas State team, but you're starting a guy that has never started in college football as a quarterback, and
Hey, that was a good
he
story
was
though.
electrifying. It was a great thing to see, but. Then it's like, well, now you got to retain him, and then you're bringing in another quarterback from Miami, and Poffenberger. So, the whole side of football is just it's so like overwhelming. And then you get into basketball, and it's like, okay, this is not too bad. But football is so overwhelming just because of how much has been happening in this program these last few years. I mean, when they fired Seth, it was just a big disaster. And you hire Morris, and you don't expect anything. You play okay. This year, you expected more. You don't play that great. It's just you got to have something. This is a win now year. I've been saying that since the end of this past season. It's a win now year.
Yep.
Uh, Prove yourself, Eric Morris. So it's exciting to kind of maybe watch and I'm at all spring and fall camps and all that, so I'm always there. I live right down the street from the stadium, so it's like, well, I'm always there. But uh, I've learned over these past few years to now don't gauge the team too early, because then you're gonna get disappointed later on, and then all
No,
the stuff that you say early on is just gonna be like completely nothing. um, but yeah, I'm excited, and you know having a good defense for this team, when you have this type of offense that can really score a lot of points when they really want to, it brings a good brand of football. Unlike basketball, where you're so slow and you're defensive oriented, it's more fun to watch this football team when they're actually able to contribute on both sides. So,
I feel you. I feel you on that one. I definitely thought FAU football would have been a lot better than they were last year. I could not have you. I would have told you were crazy if Tom Herman was getting fired and FAU was winning 3 games. And I mean, I didn't expect. I wasn't expecting the college football playoffs or anything. But I thought 6 wins, maybe 7 or even 8, was manageable. And then it just blew up in their face. So I don't know how much Tom Herman is known in Denton, but I know he's not liked in Austin. And
mm-mm.
now he's not a big no one's really a fan of him down in Boca anymore either. So that tenure crashed and burned. But it's a new Texas era in FAU because they went and got Zach Hitley from
Yeah,
Texas Tech. But you guys faced off in the first. You guys played them, right? You played Texas Tech in the beginning of the year.
that was awful. I mean, that was the worst game I've seen in a while. 66-21. It was hot. It was really hot. It was 11 a.m.
Oh boy.
It was all signs for disaster in that game. Um, and Texas Tech came off of a loss to Washington State. They barely beat Abilene Christian. It was like, I remember there was a lot of hype. It was like, oh my gosh, North Texas could beat Texas Tech on the road. No, it was horrible. It was just miserable being out there and just seeing them just get absolutely blasted. Um, but I think Kitley is a better option than Tom Herman ever was. I don't know if you've really looked into it, but I've seen Kitley. He was at Western Kentucky. If that sounds right, wasn't he?
Yeah, yeah, he
Yeah,
was.
okay. That
Yep.
he was with Zappy, I'm pretty sure.
Mhm. Yeah. Mhm.
So I mean, and he came with Zappy, and him were a package deal, I think, from Houston Christian.
Yep.
I could be,
Yeah.
yeah. I remember that because we played Houston Christian when they had Zappy. We played Zappy when he was on Western Kentucky.
Oh,
So yeah, I think he's a great coach for FAU, and I think you look at some of these hires around the AAC, and they're really confusing. Temple hiring
Casey Keeler.
PC Keeler from, I think it was SFA, or no, Sam Houston.
Sam
Sam
Houston.
Houston. Yeah, Sam Houston fell apart. So that they've been some weird little deals happening. UAB not firing Dilfer.
That's strange.
Um, yeah, Tulsa. I don't even remember who they even hired, to be honest.
See, Tulsa, in my opinion, got a really good coach in Trey Lamb. He's from Eastern Tennessee State. Young guy, really young guy. He's not younger than Kitley, but still in his 30s. And I listened to one of his podcasts, and he actually, I, I didn't know what to expect, but he seemed like he knew what he was talking about. He's talking about, all of Tulsa's players are going to have contracts. I mean, just that's the one thing that stood out to me is like he's very forward thinking on NIL, and I feel like at a school like Tulsa, you gotta be, because if you don't know what you're doing, you'll end up like Kevin Wilson.
Yeah, ooh, yeah, that's very true. But I'm hoping this conference will be more competitive next year. In both sports. I mean, basketball has been so underwhelming this year. It's very disappointing to see that we don't have any more Q1 games left. It's like if you lose a game, like I said, if you lose a game, it feels like you're just completely off. Um, Especially for North Texas wise. But football wise, I mean, this is a North Texas team that should be competing next year. I think FAU is a team that could be competing in 2 years. With some of those pieces that they have, with pieces that we have. I mean, you look at UTSA. I think UTSA is going to take a big fall off. They did this year, in my opinion. I predicted it. On our podcast that we have, I predicted UTSA would be barely 6-6, and look at that, they were 6-6.
Yeah.
So. It's almost like a big disaster with this football in this conference. But I'm kind of excited to see how North Texas can match up. They have a favorable schedule next year. You don't have the just brutal back to back with Memphis, or back to back with Memphis, Tulane, and Army. I hate the American for that. They did that back to back years where we had Memphis and Tulane back to back. So
I mean, I feel like that's a compliment from the AAC. They're looking at you in high regard, but also that is just nuts. I mean, that's brutal. That's like when FAU 2 years ago they played Illinois and Clemson, like within either
oh.
back to back or like within 3 weeks of each other. And against Clemson, they got blown out, and Casey Thompson blew out his knee. And Illinois, they almost won with the backup quarterback, but they lost by 2 in overtime. So that was like that was the highest point of the Tom Herman era. It was almost beating Illinois, almost. Uh, and so, yeah, I'm on it. That was just not. It was not fun. Bad football is not fun. And yeah, and I just saw a comment. They had to play Ohio with Curtis Rourke like a
Oh.
couple weeks after that. So that was just not fun. And so that's why, like, bad year one for Tom Herman. All right, your quarterback blows out his knee. Bad schedule. The year two was just not excusable. Last year, that was just brutal. So I'm excited for the new head coaches though in the AAC, like you mentioned. There are questionable ones, but I mean, KC Keeler's a winner. He's won at the places he's been at, and he started up there. I think he was at like Delaware or something. He's from Delaware,
Mhm.
and so I guess that might help. But Temple and Rice, in my opinion, are really really hard places to win. I credit Rob Lanier right now in basketball for having Rice even be decent. Like last year, they were horrendous, and now they're like they could knock off some teams if they play right.
Uh, uh, I don't know about that. I mean, they lost to UNT Dallas. They lost to our sister
They
school,
did.
man.
They did.
I watched. It was like a 12 p.m. game on like a Tuesday, and I watched it, and it was a Thursday. Yeah, I mean, they haven't won a conference game since Charlotte.
Yeah,
I feel, and you're right. I mean,
they've only lost the one game by double digits though to you guys. So it was like I'm like, oh, you know what? They're better than they were.
they kind of. It felt like to me they kind of lost that FAU game in a pretty bad way. I
Oh,
mean, from your perspective, I don't know, but it felt like Rice had a chance to win that a few times. Uh,
yeah. I mean, FAU they were cold the entire half, and then all of a sudden, like they had this one guy Rice did who was unconscious. He hit like back to back triples to extend the lead, and then in that game, their mistake was they only really have one guy who it seems like they trust, and that's Trey Brodna, the guy from USC
yeah,
Upstate. And they tried to play through him, and it just they didn't need to. They had the other guy who was shooting lights out, but he was only averaging like 3 points a game coming into it. So I don't know. I do feel Rob Lanier is like I'm rooting for him because I feel like SMU did him absolutely foully. They fired him for I think Andy Enfield, and I mean, Andy Enfield's a good coach. I don't know how much better or worse he is than Rob Lanier, but they're going to a new conference, so I'm rooting for him. But like even in football, basketball, Rice and Temple are hard places to win. Temple not as much in basketball, but in
yeah.
football, I don't. Matt Rule deserves some type of prize for getting that place
I think
going.
Rice's problem is Temple, it feels like Temple invests a little bit more in athletics. Rice invests about as much money as like a baby could invest in an athletic program, which is nothing. They don't invest in anything. Last year, the past 2 years we played at Rice, there was a shot clock issue. So the 2 years ago we played at Rice, the none of the shot clocks worked. They
Oh,
were completely off, and they would have to count down from 10. The PA guy would count down from 10, and
no
that
shot.
was like, I was like, oh my gosh. And I was in the stands that game, and I was just screaming at them. I was like, come on, this is amateur. And then
No shot.
last year, we start the game and we get a free throw. They get a technical foul because the shot clocks are on the floor. They're not
Oh,
in on the above the baskets. And of course, I was giving Scott Para the most hell possible because I think Scott Para is the worst coach that has ever stepped foot on a college basketball court. In terms of niceness, I think Rick Pitino and all those people have their other issues, but Rice just doesn't do anything with it. You're playing in a million-year-old football stadium where JFK did a freaking speech about going to the moon. They hosted a Super Bowl and they still haven't renovated it. Barely, they renovated the end zone, but I mean, I feel bad for people that support Rice or the few people that do support Rice and people that support Temple. I think UTSA is a hard place to play at for basketball.
yeah,
I
definitely.
mean, they have their internal issues. They can't even work out in their strength room because of black mold.
Oh,
So yeah, yeah. And that
that's
arena, I took a picture and I posted it on Twitter and I said, "Wow, this is the worst place I've ever been to." And it was a lot of people agreed. It's a terrible place to play, and that's why UTSA is not winning ever in basketball because they just can't. They don't have the resources to compete in this conference. They only have it in football because they only invest in football. I mean, Jeff Traylor takes stuff out of his contract just to be able to pay people. You know,
yeah.
so
Now that's why I'm glad FAU made the stadium improvements when they
mhm,
did, because I definitely did not like how it looked beforehand, and I mean, I'm cool with the smaller size because for most parts it's 80 to 90% filled,
yeah.
so that's at least that looks good on TV right now, and that's the most important thing to me. But I agree, Rice and UTSA's basketball stadiums, those are diabolical. When people were talking about UTSA to the PAC conference, I mean, I was like, guys, come on, Gonzaga is not like playing in this. I'm like,
Memphis goes to UTSA this year. That is going to be something to look out for on social media because they host Memphis, and they're going to have to. You're going to have to. I mean, I'm telling you, you walk basically on the concourse to get to the arena to get onto the floor. I mean, it is amateur hour. They're I guess you could say their premium seating is like this little ledge above the basket, and I mean,
FAU. See, FAU used to have a ledge, but now they refurbished that, and it's a club upstairs now. You got boxes, you got a nice area with food. Hey, it gets the job done, and it sells extra money. I don't know about a ledge though. I don't know.
it's like a little perch, and they call it the there's a sign up there that says "Fear the Pecker," so
Oh no, I saw that.
that describes how well they promote their basketball. Uh, yeah, a lot of my posts about the arena kind of were like picked up by other people, and they're like, "Wow, this place sucks." I'm like, "Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, it does,
yeah,
it
no.
does."
And
Paint
and
falling off the ceiling, and
See, I think they made a really good hire though in Austin Claunch. I think he's a good
yes,
coach, and I think Primo Spears is a top 5 player in the conference. But outside of that, I don't know necessarily what they've got going on for them. So in basketball and football, a lot going on. But I went to the Alamo Dome for the first time, and I liked that. I liked the indoor facility. I thought it was really nice. They
yeah.
had an insane media meal. If you go credentialed, that's real. They got like barbecue is really good.
Well, when we went this year, the media meal was terrible.
Uh,
I didn't have any. I didn't go up there. I was just on the sideline with our main UNT guy, and
yeah.
my friend was credentialed. He went up there and he's like, "No, this is terrible." I guess we have higher standards. I don't know.
Yeah,
Maybe.
barbecue. I don't know. Barbecue in Texas might have some turf wars. Down here, barbecue. There's only like 2 spots that are valid. Other than that,
Yeah, I think that was a little bit of an issue. It was like everybody was like, "Oh, this is terrible," but I do like the Alamo Dome. I think football wise, you look at a lot of these stadiums in this conference, and it's like, wow, you actually have a chance to move up. I mean, you look at Memphis, and Memphis's biggest issue is their football. That's the reason they're not in the Pac-12 or big. They got denied from the Big 12, but that's the reason they're not going to the Pac-12. They don't have the facilities to actually do it. Besides men's basketball's indoor football or indoor basketball facility, that's the only thing they have going for them.
Yeah.
I think they own part of the Liberty Bowl, so it's like, a lot of these football stadiums in this conference are very nice. I've been to a lot of them now in the past few years, but nobody's moving up anytime soon. I'll tell you that right now. Nobody's moving up.
I will say, shout out Wichita State. They got some really nice baseball and softball facilities.
Yeah,
I went up there for the softball classic or the tournament last year
yeah,
that they had up there. I liked it. I didn't go on their whole campus, but I thought for a softball only baseball only school, it looks really. They still have the football stadium. It's still there. It's just a
yeah.
track now. So they could launch it back up, but I don't know. Wichita was that was one of my. I like that AAC trip. I thought they had really good food up there.
You do need to venture to the Roundhouse there, or the whatever they call the arena the Roundhouse. That's a great place, especially when it's full.
Yeah,
That is a great
it's
place
just
to.
tough to get up there. I would have been at Dallas this weekend for whatever reason. I don't know what's going on. Plane tickets were over like $400. I don't know what's going on there, but
Very typical.
yeah,
Very typical
I
right now.
don't know because like usually Fort Worth, there's a ton of flights to Fort Worth for cheap down here. Usually because I've gone to both of the AAC media days because they were up there, and I
Mhm.
was like, why not? But now, for whatever reason, it was expensive. Wichita is a pain to get to. You got to fly to DC and then DC to Wichita. I did
Mhm.
that. If I got to save my money, if FAU softball gets up there, we'll go back. But
Yeah.
they don't play this year up there in basketball. Wichita comes down here, so unfortunately, won't get to see that. But shout out to the Doodah Diner. That's a great spot up there.
I've been there before. Yes.
Went to the dude. Okay, yeah. They got what's that French toast? They got it's like apple pie French toast or something like that. It's really good.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like something like that. That's insane that they got. I got it. It was good. There's another spot up there called Homegrown. That's like all over the U.S. though. They got insane cinnamon cake or something. I don't know. I'm a big food guy. Whenever I go on these trips, like San
Same.
Antonio, they had some really good food.
Oh, San Antonio's the best for Mexican food, man.
Yeah, San Antonio had some really good food. So
I will say FAU, my whole goal was not just to go to the game, not just to do whatever, it was to go to Vinny's Cafe.
oh yeah,
That was my whole goal. I told my Uber driver to drop me off at the freaking cafe. And I was like, I have to be here before it closes. I have to go here. And it was so worth it.
you went.
That
You
was
got
a
it. Let's
hell of
go.
a place. That was my whole that was the only reason why I really wanted to go to Boca, because I was like, I have to get this. This is like one of the few opportunities I'm gonna get to get this. I want to get it now. It was
It's
awesome.
good. It's good. Yeah, chicken Caesar, baby. You got to sub the chicken for chicken tenders. But yeah, it's
Did
good.
not know
Now I might go get that. Like once we hop off here,
that.
that spot's good. It's honestly though, I'm glad sometimes the Boca food scene can be a little questionable because like the old people will come here and they need their soft foods or something. But we got good spots. You just got to find them.
Yeah,
I think you said you went to El Camino. That's
yeah.
good. Rocco's Tacos, better. Go to Rocco's next time. Hopefully, you find yourself back down here. Venture out. Delray Beach is where the food's at, all on the avenue.
That's what I heard. That is exactly what I heard.
Yep. But Miles, thank you for taking some time to hop on with us today. I know we got some live viewers, so if you just tuned in, make sure to hit the rewind button once we're off, and you can hear all about FAU UNT hoops, UNT football updates, and some AAC thoughts from us. But until next time, I'm Robbie Lastella for Miles from the UNT Eagle. We'll catch you next time.